So we're sitting here at the airport in Vienna, and Frithjof is just on his way to Africa. And we have discussed the tremendous opportunity opening up in South Africa, that there is real interest in choosing an alternative path to development. And we see the opportunity to create a first site for open source ecology, possibly for open source ecology in Africa, with the help of a global community. So the idea is now to put our minds together, and I'm asking Frithjof some questions about how he would think, and we will enter dialogue, how we would think this issue can be pursued. So here we have the situation where we have practically no agriculture.
We do have what one could describe as a virtually unlimited amount of land. I mean, it's an enormous piece of land. It's the size of Hessen or something like that in German terms, or Steiermark in terms of Austrian terms. It's well, you have to imagine a great deal of land, but without any agriculture, except for an occasional field of corn. On top of that, the only thing they make out of corn at this point is called pap. And I put into circulation the sentence, pap is not for human consumption, which...
Okay, but let's focus on the main point. How would you get this? How would you get this area able to run agriculture on the base of machines?
Well, for us, the crucial question, which is the first question, is really what can open source ecology advise us in terms of how to start? There's very little there except for land and water and people who are willing to work with us, which is unusual. And so what we need to know is, should we tell them that the first thing to do is to build pumps, is the first thing to build an energy cube, is the first thing to build a plow?
Or is the first thing to do is to import qualified engineers from Johannesburg who really can work with these schemes? Maybe start with an evaluation of the land and an evaluation of the possible community development. Is the first step to create an imagery to motivate global supporters. I think it's really an open question that we're dealing with here. and what is needed is that we put our minds together, and I think the progress in open source ecology is quite considerable, and it should be combined with social developments around the globe that allow for further expansion and application. So is open source ecology ready to give some initial advice even to developing countries where people have to move together, have to be educated? So this is the question that we're dealing right now, and yeah.
Yes, and let me just add, these two questions do not exclude each other. I mean, it would be very useful to know, for example, that an energy cube or a plow would be an intelligent first step. On that basis, we can then, of course, look for people who have the skills and the training to make these things, and that's extremely possible under the circumstances. We have contact with lots of people who might have these skills. So, of course, one thing that Franz mentioned to me that might be the very best thing first to do is to put on film some impression of what things look like there, maybe some of the people and some of what they're up against, and then to send that to Europe and combine it and answer to that picture with suggestions and possibly with something of a detailed scenario, something of a detailed plan of what people who have worked on open source ecology from their side would suggest as a way of dealing with what I will say is an incredible, marvelous opportunity there.
And Frithjof, you told me in the car that this is really an amazing situation because you have so far worked mainly in urban circumstances. This is the first time you really are driven into an agricultural, rural setting.
More or less, but that isn't quite true. I've worked in Mpumalanga, I've worked in places that were more rural, but I never had anything like the opportunity of starting from scratch, of not adding some kind of vertical gardening to fields that were already ready to go and had already been used. But this is, I think, what some people in open source ecology must be hoping for, namely a situation where they can really show their stuff, where they can say, okay, we take hold of this enormous piece of land and we'll show you what we can do.
Okay. So you're going now to Africa, going to talk to the owners of the land. How you said the land is as big as a small European country like Brandenburg.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you drive through it. It takes about 4 or 5 hours to drive through it. So that's also a rough estimate.
And I think what would be great to achieve in Africa from your side would be like a letter of intent, like a public message that they are ready to look into new ways of development.
Oh, no problem about that.
Okay, so we hope for that.
Okay.